Here's our vocab for 12-2, frequency tables and histograms. Before we start, something I'd like you to note, there are some very specific rules for how histograms look. Things like the bars have to be touching that I'm very specific about. Otherwise, they're just bar graphs. But again, they kind of are, but we have rules for them, so please do follow them. First term we have is the word interval. An interval is a numerical range of numbers into which data is sorted. They must be evenly spaced. That is important. And notice here when we count, right, 0 to 25, 26 to 50, so we're going by 25s here. Please make sure that you do keep track of that. Oh, and I'm sorry, so this is a table here. These are the intervals on this side. In this case, these are the height of the trees. Frequency is the number of data values in an interval, like how many times it occurs. So for instance, I'm talking about tree heights. This is some sort of survey somebody did. Between 0 and 25 feet, there were 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Between 26 and 50, again, you can count 5 each here. So the frequency is how often it occurs. The whole thing together is called a frequency table. So again, intervals here, frequencies here, the whole thing is a frequency table. And you do have to label them, what each column means, and an overall label for the table itself. Here's where we get to the specifics of a histogram. This is a graph that displays data from a frequency table. So the stuff on the last slide, turning it into a graph. 1 bar for each interval. The height of the bar shows the frequency in the interval it represents. No gaps between bars. That's the most often mistake kids make. And then finally, bars are the same width. That's also another mistake I see quite often. And these are things that I do great on. So I took the frequency table from the last slide and turned it into, well, it's 2 slides ago, turned it into a histogram. Again, you might call it a bar graph, but it's not. It's a very specific type of bar graph called a histogram. In this case, we can see the intervals down below, and again, it's labeled. Notice the bars are the same width, and notice that they are all touching each other, so the sides are touching. And here's the number of trees along the sides. So here's your frequency along the sides. So again, intervals go here, frequency here, label, label, and label. All important to get all the points on a graph, or a histogram in this case. There are several shapes for histograms. Uniform when it's more or less kind of like blocked off like this. I mean, it could be taller, but they're all about the same. So bars are roughly the same height. And again, intervals on the bottom, frequency on the side. This is a uniform histogram. A symmetric histogram can look like this. Basically, the idea is if you put a mirror down the middle, one side would look like the other. It doesn't have to have this shape. Like you could have the bars all taller on the left and bars taller on the right and smaller in the middle too. Then the vertical line can divide the graph into roughly mirror images. So this is symmetric. And then we have skewed, a peak that is not at the center of the graph. So this one, I know this is going to sound weird. When the left side is taller, it's called skewed right. If the right side were taller, so if the whole thing looked like this, notice again the bar should be touching here, so if it looked like this instead, right, that would be skewed left. I know it seems odd, but again, whichever side it's taller on, it's called skewed the other direction. Again, the word is skewed. Again, the word we're looking for is skewed.